Welcome to the Brand Wise podcast, where we talk about the big branding moves that business owners are making and the why behind it. I'm your host, Jess Freeman, here to help you be wise and be bold. Hey, Hilda, I am so excited to talk to you today about your rebrand. So to get us started, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us what you do and what your brand is all about?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Hilda Perez. I'm the COO of a brand called Salud. We're a nutritional wellness company that we make our own proprietary blends of vitamins and supplements, but we also offer functional nutrition consultations to the community and partner with local food advocacy organizations.
I loved the blend of their services and products. Did it
For sure.
start primarily as one or the other, or did it start as both?
My father started the company over now going on 35 years. It's just as old as I am. And he's a general practitioner by trade, trained as a nutritionist, and was giving those to the community. We're Dominican background, and it was started in New York. So really helping the Latino community there. He saw the need for having better vitamins and supplements on the market because everything that he would suggest to people, there was a lot of fillers. It wasn't really targeting the problems that community had. And that kind of was the impetus for creating then our own supplement line.
I love that. You saw a need and decided to fill it. 35 years. Sure. Okay, so let's talk about the rebrand. Talk to us about the old brand. What made you decide oh, okay, we're due for a rebrand now. How did that come about?
Absolutely. That's so funny because I was preparing for today and I'm like, I have the old bottles and we have our old setup.
Nice.
They're plastic. They're kind of they were fine for the time. And then we were blessed enough to do a full rebrand. And now it's all fully glass bottles, really clear to see, new names, kind of more catchy and things like that, with the highlight of focusing that we're a minority-owned business, a women-owned business, and we have through the lab that we work with, there's a GMP certification. So certifying and showcasing all of those really important labels, right, that we do have to make us competitive in the market, had to come onto the new bottles. A big impetus was the pandemic, really. We were all kind of forced to re-strategize and see how can we continue growing the company, because we felt like we sort of plateaued, and rebranding was a really natural way of doing that. And how can we then get more competitive to get into the national retailers, which is the next goal.
How long did that the rebrand process take?
Gonna be honest with you, it's been a solid 3 years ongoing, because things have been super the pandemic was also, they were slow, there were supply chain issues. We couldn't get the bottles from the manufacturer. There were delays in the design because in the same vein of us having a physical rebrand of the product, we were rebranding all of our digital assets, everything from the website to the social media. It was a full gamut, getting new photography. So it was truly a process. And now we're in the phase of now we have all these assets. Now the foundational work has been set up to kind of grow. And we've had even then it was just difficult because we had a provider that wasn't really great. They set us back. We spent a lot of money on them. So a lot of learning.
Yeah. So did you roll out the digital branding first? Go ahead and roll this out and just wait for the glass and those parts?
Very loosely, we kind of did teasers, letting everybody know, letting our customer base know that a change was coming also, because that's something that we saw was necessary. Anytime that we had done even a rebrand in the past, because this isn't even the original bottles. We had other bottles before that within the 35 years, our demographic now skews more on the older side. So they're very used to seeing what it looks like. So we had to gently say, this is going to be the difference. It's going to be the same formula, but this is what it looks like, to mitigate the change. But then once we got the bottles, and it was wonderful to really just have everything set up and ready to go.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm curious, because sometimes when companies rebrand, they might keep aspects of the brand, especially if that demographic is very used to how things look, and it can be a little confusing. So is there anything that you kept as part of the old brand that you carried over, whether that was visuals or messaging or both?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely the visual. So the company logo, right? The Salud logo, it's like two leaves intertwining, similar to like the yin and yang
Mm-hmm.
symbol. That definitely we kept it, but it just was more modernized,
Mm,
changing the font, changing those type of things. Even though we renamed the names of it, we still kept the original names underneath, just so people understand and we can start doing that full transition.
mm.
And definitely just even made it more visible to have that description of what this product does and they can clearly see it. So it's more like placement and bringing things
Mhm.
to the forefront.
That's really smart to, like, keep the old name to,
Hmm.
like, reference it because I think especially, again, for that older demographic, like, that's gonna be helpful, and I think that's really smart because I I think sometimes we forget about really thinking about our demographic.
Hmm.
Like, not everyone serves an older demographic, but it's like, what does this age or this demographic or this whatever, like, what's gonna matter to them? Do they need,
Hmm.
like, extra messaging? Do they not want too much messaging? Like, do they need video walkthroughs? Do they need the old name on it? And so I think it's really cool that you guys, like, kept that to help make that transition easier, even though in theory it might have just been easier for you on your end to just be like, okay, boom, like new name, everything, instead of, because I'm
Exactly.
assuming there was probably like cross referencing, double checking, like, okay, this is the old name, this is the new name, is it correct, like triple check that we're labeling everything, so that kind of added an extra step, I'm assuming, kind of on your end.
It did, and it's also because we had to make a lot of messaging. We are primarily Spanish speaking, and our
Hmm.
demographic is primarily Spanish speaking, and we also have English. The bottles themselves, just because of how it is in the United States, are all in English.
Mm.
So making sure that everything matched, we definitely even had like outside eyes to look at it because we've been looking at it for so long, and
Yes.
we didn't want to mess up. And especially if you're putting things on social and you're putting it on your website or PR situation, so there's definitely a lot of cross referencing. And there was a second, now that I think about it, a secondary reason too is because our proprietary line, we have trademarked, right? So,
Hmm.
like on a legal standpoint, we still want to keep it on the branding while we still get caught up on a lot of legal things that are.
That makes sense. I actually saw, I think it was like a video or picture or something on Instagram about some brand that was, their product was in Costco and they had a typo, not on the actual product label, but on the,
Hmm.
like, I don't, shelf
The
thing box.
display.
Yeah, display box, whatever it
Hmm.
was. And it was like it was like their brand name, or like
Hmm.
maybe not the brand name, but the product name. So it was like huge letters. It wasn't like a little smaller font underneath. So like that double
Yeah.
checking, bringing in outsiders.
The human error for sure will
Yeah,
happen because it all starts to look the same.
I know, I know. Whoever had posted it, whatever brand or whoever it was, I remember the person sharing it was like, I did actually like reach out to the brand to let them know, because it was like, um,
Good.
you might want to, and I think they just did it like on Instagram or something, and the
Hmm.
social media manager was like, "Oh no."
Yeah.
It's like not
You gotta have
something I
some
would.
grace for these companies though,
Yeah,
'cause
yeah.
they're trying.
And sometimes I feel like as small business owners, that makes us feel a little bit better because it's like, everybody's making mistakes. Like,
1,000%, especially because it could also feel like when at least for us as a small business, our rebrand felt like it was going glacially slow.
mm,
So it does feel nice when
yeah.
other larger players kind of have their oopsies.
Also, talking about the rebrand process, what about, any challenges or like, oh my gosh, should we have done this? Like, were there any like
Mm,
regret moments, or like, like this is
yeah,
like
that's a
didn't
good.
expect it? Because I know we all think like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm just gonna rebrand, get a new logo and some new colors, and like, what
Yeah.
could go wrong?
Yeah, a lot actually. I feel like we all went through it. So, um the biggest learning, right? Because there's always going to be challenges, especially when you're
Mhm.
a small business owner doing something of this scale. Even though it sounds easy, it's definitely a scale thing, right? There's so
Yeah.
many pieces to think about, down to the email, right? Making sure if we shorten something or what everything looks like has to be really cohesive. So in the challenging part, I think the thing that we had was that we did the whole website because it needed a whole
Mm.
look and feel that matches the new brand. We have a wonderful marketing consultant that we worked with that brought in a great design team, but then when we had someone actually build it out, that's where we had issues, right?
Mm.
They didn't really understand, they weren't doing the work up to par, and it could be very difficult when you're trying to translate creative to the physical, like,
Mhm.
layout of things, right? So I think learning to choose who you're going to partner with, who's going to do this specifically if you're a small business, is so mission critical.
Mhm.
We kind of just went with somebody that we had sort of worked on another project before. This wasn't their expertise, but they were offering like a good price. And we're like, okay, they said that they could do it for all these other things.
Mm.
And that just dragged and dragged and dragged and really put us, really set us back almost like a year in really launching the
Oh,
way that we
man.
wanted to launch. So it's almost like we were in too deep at this point.
Yeah.
We had a contract. It was all this thing. So um, that was the biggest learning, is really choosing who you're going to partner with to do a rebrand, because yes, you can do it in house. As a small business, it's almost impossible. You need to get
Yeah.
experts, but also
Mhm.
making sure that those experts are vetted and that you trust the work and that they understand you as a company.
Mhm.
It's a big
Yeah.
one.
I, unfortunately, as a web designer, hear this way too often.
I know.
Right, and
I
it's
would have
so
met you before. Maybe this isn't an issue.
yeah, and the thing is like, I'm not the perfect fit for everybody. Like,
Exactly.
I'm not saying this as like, "Well,
Mhm.
I hear this all the time, if you just come to me." Like,
For
it's you
sure.
have to find the right people, and it is very, very easy to go with somebody who or you're like, "Oh, I've worked with them before," and so, like, then that's
Mhm.
easier because they know me and that kinda thing, and I'm curious looking back, like, I mean, other than obviously, you're like, "Maybe I would have thought more," or, like, I'm curious if there's, like, red flags that you saw or, like, different questions you would have asked or something, I don't know, that we can help people listening to,
Absolutely.
like, "Okay, what do I need to do from your perspective to help find that right fit?"
Absolutely. So many. I think the biggest one was really knowing that this is their expertise, that this is their
Mm.
bread and butter, and that they have the capacity to bring in partners to build out what they can't do, um, and showing proof of that. And I think
Mm.
if you are somebody that this is your business, you have those kind of case studies ready at the ready so your client can see it, right? Much more understanding how the communication is going to work, transparency in the communication, if there's going to be delays, if there's going to be um, any hiccups, making sure that they're available,
Mhm.
and not to be hand holding, right? But to really just understand that they're taking you as a client into account and giving you frequent updates, because that's the only way you can really know, especially when you're doing web development and you're not a technical, you don't
Mhm.
understand, and you're asking them like, can this button do this thing? I don't know. And it's so much easier to have face-to-face meetings and really kind of do that. So understanding the cadence of the relationship, I think, is one way of vetting somebody.
Mhm.
um, those were the two massive ones. And I think flexibility, and I know this sounds very interesting, but almost like as a pilot period, I've
Mm.
really worked well with contractors that have given us kind of that kind of faith of like, if within 3 months this isn't built out, like, what you don't need to pay us anymore, something
Oh,
like that, right?
yeah.
And that has happened. And like, we transferred to another technical contractor that we've been working with, and they've done all of this. They were understanding of our budget, of course, with reason. They need to get paid too, they have a team, all of that. But they were very like, within 4 months this is going to be done. And
Mhm.
she sends like multiple updates every week. I see them on the Slack channel. They've been fully like incorporated. It's much more, what's happening, and it's not behind the scenes. And
Mhm.
also, one of the big things for us was understanding, and we had told them this, is making sure that we had full control of all of our assets,
Mhm.
including the server, including all of that. which we ended up not having with this old one. And we
Oh,
had to
no.
regain control because they owned everything. They were very secretive
Oh.
about it. So that was extremely difficult. That was extremely costly for us because,
Mhm.
and it was almost something ridiculous when we worked with this other person. We're like, this is like, you can't do this. You can't just own someone's website so that way it
Right.
can go down anytime. So
Mhm.
asking all those questions and making sure there's no like Wizard of Oz, right?
Right,
There's no like
right.
blocking there is the big questions that I would ask for sure.
That is, one of the things that I tell people the most, like, if they inquire with me and they're like, "Oh, do you, like, manage it?" And I'm like, "Everything is in your name, because if
Mhm,
I die tomorrow, like,
mhm.
I want
That's
you
good.
to have everything." Like, I
Mhm.
don't want you, because I literally have had clients that when I started with them, I'm like, "Okay," like, this has been way long ago, because this is when I was just getting into web design, and I was like, "Okay, like, I need your domain login." And they're like, so my designer had it in her account and she died. So, like, how do
Wow.
I?" And I'm like, so it's like
Wow.
literally like my first, maybe second year business when that happened. And it happened like 2 or 3 times, which I was like,
Mhm.
what's happening to
What's
designers?
happening to designers?
Like, I think maybe
I
one
pray for
like
them.
moved overseas and just like went MIA or something.
It
But
happens. It
and
happened to
I'm
us.
and I'm like, everything is in your account. Like, it's fine. You don't have to. I think it just, if you're not techie, it can feel really intimidating to be like, oh my gosh, like, I own my host, my server, like, whatever.
Mhm.
You're not really gonna, like, it's not something you're like going into every day.
Exactly. You
Like,
just pay for it.
right. Like, especially the website itself. Yes, you might go into that every day or something,
Mhm.
but the host, it's like, I always associate it with like your HOA. Like, you're
Mhm.
not really like dealing with them that often. I
Mhm.
mean,
That's a good point.
hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully. Like, you pay them once a year or like whatever it is,
Mhm.
but you don't actually but you just go to your house,
Mhm.
So, but I'm glad you mentioned that. Even though I'm sorry, it was a very unfortunate experience
Yeah.
and drag things out. I do think it's also, obviously you can't control this, or our listeners can't either, but like, I really wish that more designers were upfront about, this is like not in my skill set.
Yeah.
Or like, this is not, and there is kind of a gray area of like, oh, I want to get into this, but then I think that they need to be transparent about, this is not like something I've done before, so this would be my
Mhm.
first time, second time, whatever. Um, which then you as a client can be like, I don't know if I want to be that first person.
Absolutely.
Um, but I really wish designers would be better about like being honest. And to be clear, for anyone listening, I don't subscribe to like, oh, you need to have designed a plumber website in order to design another plumber website.
Mhm.
Like,
I agree.
but like, if you're setting up an e-commerce website, you need to have experience setting up other e-commerce websites.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
and even in that, like, and maybe you experienced this, but like, also not all e-commerce websites are the same.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
especially nowadays, because some e-commerce is just digital products and some is shipping, some is drop shipping, like,
Mhm.
different systems integrated into it depending on like other software you're using. Like, there's so many ways to do e-commerce. And so just really like being really detailed, asking a lot of questions about the software you're using. Does your, like, if I have this, can you actually integrate it into the website? Because I don't want more people to have their rebrands delayed a year or
Mhm.
more. Like, so
I agree fully, especially getting all the software together because we use Salesforce, Lightspeed,
mm,
we use so many different things, ShipStation, like all of these different assets that need to integrate somehow
mhm.
and not break.
Yeah,
So yeah, ask as I'm big full on ask all questions. It's okay
all
to
of them.
sound like you
Mhm.
don't know because that could be difficult. People might not want to come off as not knowing so they don't get taken advantage of or
Right.
something. Just if you don't know, you don't know. And
Yeah.
then it's easier that way. And the right partner, you should be able to go with your gut. I'm big on your like intuition as a business. Is if they're being transparent, then that's a good sign, right? That
Yes.
they're being very clear up front that this is not something that they do. If they're a great kind of partner, they'll have someone in their wheelhouse. Similar to, we had the marketing consultant that's helping us do everything, and she brought in the designers that were great. And then it kind of even builds your own clientele, right?
Yeah.
That same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I want to know, since it was such a long and tedious process, like
A lot
what,
of sleepless nights.
yeah, what part are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of, for sure, and my team. My internal team really showed up in a way that was such a blessing, and they were so willing to learn and kind of were on board with the rebrand. We're super excited. They saw the vision of what we're trying to do, which is, help as many people as possible heal themselves with their roots, is kind of like the traditional practices, along with like, traditional Western medicine. So having a really good team in place that was gung ho, if you will, to do the rebrand was what I'm really proud of. And then now with the beautiful look and feel, the bottles, I'm really proud of our bottles. It's kind of one of those things like, I can see you at Sprouts, I can see you at Target now. Like, I can really see it. And
Yeah.
that's helpful for us, and almost like my own confidence as an entrepreneur. I'm like, okay, this is what we've been trying to do. Now we're here. I can see the vision of what we can do in the future. And I think that is going to be really wonderful.
I love that. I can totally see it at Sprouts and Target.
Thank you.
Like,
That's the goal. So if you know anybody,
I don't, but who knows? Somebody listening might.
Oh, yeah.
But that would be cool. And to think, like, someday I could be in Target and be like, "Oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
I know that brand."
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm gonna cross my fingers and
Thank you.
hope that I can see that.
That's a blessing, because we're also going to try and implement a social impact component, so that way we can
Ooh,
have a percentage of the funds to fund various food advocacy organizations that we already work with too. So having that grow would be incredible.
I love that. How has the rebrand impacted the company?
I think that's been the biggest thing. More opportunities have come our way.
Mm,
More opportunities of like podcasting, more PR opportunities. I think it's now really resonating with the populace, if you will, of
mhm,
the health and wellness space of being. It looks like it's a more competitive brand, so I
mm,
feel that has been a real positive. Um, my father, he hosts also like a television show on this channel called Telemicro, which is the Dominican. It's based in the Dominican Republic and that population. So seeing that be picked up is really wonderful. So I think just the opportunities that have opened up to grow the
mm,
company and business development, down to like networking, because people do it now, right? They'll
mhm.
automatically, you're at networking, they're like, oh, well, what's your company? And they go into your Instagram, and if it doesn't look cohesive,
Right.
they don't trust it. They don't trust the
Mhm.
brand. I think that's been helpful.
I love that. Yeah, it lends a lot of credibility. I mean, I'm especially guilty of it, like being a designer. But
Mhm.
even when I just go to another entrepreneur's like well, not personal Instagram, but like another person like me just running their own business and working from home, online business owner, and I go to their Instagram and it's like, not that I need it picture perfect, like, I'm not saying that at all because mine is not, but when it's not cohesive
Mhm.
or it just doesn't look the part, and I'm like,
Yeah, there's
okay,
a little
sure."
trepidation. It's like
Yeah.
dating.
Yeah,
It needs
yeah,
to look
exactly.
good.
I'm like, "Sure,
And
I will add you to my list of copywriters,
exactly.
maybe." Like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's definitely a little trepidation. So,
Sure.
I love that it's opened up more opportunities, and I think that'll just continue and hopefully get you into Target as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah. How do you feel like the rebrand impacted you personally? Like,
Mm. As an entrepreneur was a challenge.
mhm,
It was the first time we really did it, right? And also there was a challenge of trying to transcribe our very mom and pop feel
mm,
kind of because we had a storefront at some point. Like a lot of our customers know us for, I mean, I've had clients come to me, they're like, I knew you when you were 5. Like they've been with us for forever, which is really a blessing, but also just wild to think about. And how we then translate that into a digital space because we're trying to
Mm.
get more competitive and get, younger customers. And, the legacy of, at least in the Latino culture, is very generational. If your mom
Mhm.
took it, your daughter's going to take it most likely, right? And we need to speak to that person, the me's of the world, if you will,
Mhm.
without losing then the people who are very much used to having a phone call, purchasing on the phone, and all of that. So I think the challenge was trying to bridge that gap, and I think we're slowly figuring it out, and
Mhm.
using the technology and the rebrand of, showcasing to them that they also deserve a beautiful product, right? And
Mhm.
how it can benefit them.
I feel I wanna say, like, old, I feel young, I don't know, when you were, like, calling to place an order over the phone, and I was
Yeah,
like,
we
"What?"
used to do that. That's the thing.
Do people still try to do that? Do you
Just
let
ordering,
them?
like, delivery food. Yeah, we still have that part of our sales.
You
It's a big part of it still. We have a sales team, and people love to speak and ask questions, and they build a rapport, especially in the nutritional space and wellness.
Mhm.
They wanna know that you know what you're talking about,
Oh,
right? We're not just
100%.
gonna randomly buy something because it's popular, which does happen, but
Right.
we pride ourselves in the educational piece and the thought leadership piece.
Mhm.
Um, Especially since my sister is a registered dietitian, she can kind of speak to a lot of things from the medical standpoint and relay that to the team.
Mhm.
Um, and seeing the interesting thing is seeing how then we could put all of that information into the brand, right? How do we showcase that? So people still do it. I barely do it. I randomly thought about this because somebody was like, "Call, like, order the food," and I'm like, I haven't called to order food in decades.
And you're like,
It's been so long.
is there not an app
Yeah,
or
there's if
a
it's not
link?
an app, I don't know. I won't order it.
But I think, again, this goes back to the demographic, and, like, you're still I don't wanna say catering to them, like, in a bad way, but, like, you're aware that that age is used to ordering that, and so
Yeah,
you're still, because I can see so many companies that would be like, "Absolutely not." Like, it's 2020,
yeah,
2024, whatever, like, we're done, we're marking, you could have easily been like, "Rebrand, no more calling in to get a product,"
absolutely. And we
So
didn't want to get rid of that because that is kind of like our bread and butter. It's still very a large part of it, but it needs to be incorporated. And this is maybe just a personal stance. I feel like the sense of community is getting lost when it comes to a lot of products and
Mhm,
services, and a lot of brands try to create this authentic connection, but then, it's costly to have someone on the phone. But I think
yeah,
there's a benefit there, and you do create a better relationship with the customer that they're gonna wanna stay with you for 20 plus years, right?
mhm,
There's something to say there, so it's not something we wanna get rid of
yeah,
because we are big on community building and still helping you, specifically since we're helping people with ailments.
mhm.
It's a testy space, it's very vulnerable.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned the connection and the community, because I work with dietitians quite a bit.
Mm,
Like, that's my niche, and I
mhm,
am constantly telling my clients and my followers, like, working on your health is a vulnerable thing, and
mhm,
so you want to connect with people,
mhm,
and, like, usually I'm tying that into, like, their website and what content needs to be there and language and all that. And because, like, if I'm gonna get on a call with you and talk to you about, like, my chronic condition or, like, my symptoms or whatever,
mhm,
like, I'm not just gonna do that with anybody. Like, if I'm gonna work
mhm,
with you one on one, I wanna make sure that we connect. And so even for selling products, like, having that connection and being able to answer those questions, I think, is along that same line, and we need that connection because, like you mentioned, I think early on, like, there's a lot of fake stuff and not good quality stuff, and so, like,
mhm.
they just wanna make sure they're being taken care of.
Absolutely, and it's like the fake stuff, it could be dangerous to your health. So I think
Right.
we're trying to tell people, I'm like, you can, like, you might die, but, like, you might end up in the hospital if you do this for
Mhm.
too long, or if you're not
Yeah.
knowledgeable about it. It could be dangerous. But I agree with that so much, and I feel that's part of the brand, right? Because we think
Mm-hmm.
about branding of just, beautiful display, beautiful website, beautiful this, but the brand to me is the whole ethos of the company. If it's how you run your company from within, that's going to be very easily displayed out to your client. And I think that's critical. And it is keeping the brand right top of mind. So like our little tagline is heal with your roots. Everybody on my team knows that tagline and everything that has to go with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're very family focused. So what does that look like? And that has to really portray throughout all the emails, SMS, even doing kind of things like this. How does that fully portray through? Because it is part of the brand. And that's
Mm-hmm.
how we want to treat the client. And we want them to know when they see the bottle, it's called like My Happy Joints. It's like, oh, but they also are all of these other
Mm-hmm.
wonderful things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. Yes, it is really the whole ecosystem, the whole ethos. Like it's all the emails and the interactions and all of
Mhm.
that. And I mean, I was on a client call earlier today and I was like, "Oh, like there's construction going on, like might be an interruption." Just like I told you. And,
Mhm.
she was like, "Oh, it's fine." Like, she's like, "I know, like, your call reminder said, like, it's okay if, like, kids or dogs or, like, there's interruptions, like, we're family friendly." And I just loved that she, like, called that like, noticed
Yeah.
it because it's one of those things I'm like, I don't know if anybody actually, like,
Mhm.
reads
I
this because
noticed it too, actually. I'm like, that's so smart. We're all
So
working from home. We were all living life while
yeah,
trying to run
yeah.
companies.
I'm like, this is not a make or break thing. Like things can be edited, we can pause. Like this
Right.
is not the end of the world. So
Mhm.
it's all part of the brand.
For sure.
Okay. So last question.
Mhm.
And I mean, you've shared a lot of good nuggets, but I'm curious if you have any other advice for business owners that are thinking of rebranding.
Mm. Several things come to mind, and I think the first one is like definitely find a good partner that's going to help you with it.
Mm-hmm.
Do your vetting, do your homework. Don't don't just go with the cheapest option. Don't go with the most expensive option either. That doesn't mean that
Mm-mm.
it's gonna. I've done both, and like both either panned out or not panned out. So really do your research, trust yourself, and that you know your brand, and the right person's gonna understand it. From the person
Mm.
who's developing it down to the photographer, if you're working with photographer shoots, let's say. I think that's really critical, and there is a sense of fun and play that comes with it, and kind of understanding that because it can get really stressful. And like I've been
Mm.
looking at this copy for 13 days straight, and it's like, do we use joints? Do we not use joints? It like make it fun. And I was able to do that with my team, and that's why I was really lucky. They took a lot of joy in the process because they were so excited
Mm.
for the changes that were coming. I think that's a big one. And in that, kind of like you were saying, like it's not that serious. It's serious because it's your company. Don't get
Right.
me wrong,
Right.
but it's not, or it shouldn't be, ideally, a make or break situation
Mm-hmm.
because it could be very easy now, specifically in society. Like there was just a vitamin and supplement company recently that we saw went bankrupt, and they were huge. They were massive.
Mm-hmm.
They were direct to consumer. They were everywhere that you saw. And I'm like, wow, like how did they get so fast, so quick? And they had beautiful branding, beautiful photos, and they went bankrupt, right? Not that I wish that upon anybody,
Right.
truly. It's just don't scale so fast either just because you're trying to compete with somebody
Mm.
else, and then you don't have kind of like that company ethos to back it up. Because when
Mhm.
that order comes out, like this is how I think about it. When Target's like, hey, we need so many units, so many SKUs, I'm like, okay, I got to be ready to like go
Right.
fulfill this. And what does that look like? It's easy to get caught up in the quickness because of social media and all of these other brands. I mean, there's so many vitamin and supplement companies out there, but I think knowing that if you want to, like, slow and steady does win the race to a second. Like
Mhm.
there's going to be a perfect time that your brand's going to launch, and if you've had that care and you've worked with the right people, then it's going to resonate to the right people because consumers now are much more savvy
Mhm.
than we think that they are. Right? We are consumers. I consider myself at least a savvy consumer to see if this is going to be like anytime I'm shopping. So I
Yeah.
hope that the same.
Yeah, same. I agree. And I think that goes back to the connection piece as well. Like
Hmm.
last year, I saw a lot of people online talking about like marketing is changing, people are more savvy. And I mean, there's a lot that goes into that and things that need to shift, but I think one of those is that connection that we were talking
Hmm.
about. So, um, yeah. But this was so fun, and
Yes,
you
thank
shared
you.
some really good nuggets. But I want to make sure that we can connect with you in the brand and check out your products. So let us know where to find you online.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me and letting me share my story. So, online on Instagram, we're at Salud, SALUD, by BY, Dr. DR, period, Rigo. It's super long. We'll put it in the show notes.
We'll put it in the show notes. Don't
We've been
worry.
trying to short it. It's part of the brand thing because it's salud.co is the website. So we're trying to get that little, we're still playing with Instagram to see if we could get that handle. Same on Facebook, it's salud.co and Salud or Salud Group. And me personally, if you want to connect in my professional is it's Hilda P on Instagram. So I'm always happy to connect with different people and talk about the branding bruises and wins that are out there. Yeah.
Awesome. I will link all that in the show notes so you guys can go check it out. But thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much.
Are you a squiggle or a square? Go to justcreatives.com/quiz to find out where your brand ends up and find out what a square or squiggle even means. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to leave a review or share it on Instagram and tune in next week for another episode.